On December 17, 1981, a woman in Oakwood Village, Ohio, noticed something strange at her neighbor's house.
When I took my kids to school, my son said, "Mom, Alma's door is open." I don't know how long the door had been open. The snow had blowed in. I kept calling her name. I saw her laying there on the bed, face down, and I couldn't get a response from her.
She was only 29 years old when she was murdered.
Right.
Alma Knopfsinger was a single mom with 3 children in probably what was one of the safest places in the country.
She was a tiny little thing, too.
5'3", 104 pounds. Sweet little Alma, who shouldn't have had an enemy in the world, somebody wanted her dead. You have to look into everybody in her life at the time to see if any of them had some kind of issues going on that would make them so mad at her they would beat her to death like that.
I know.
32 years is a long time. Maybe there's more we can find out.
This will be a challenge because the case was originally investigated by the local law who did their best at the time. But this was before forensics as we know it today.
He hadn't worked a whole lot of murder cases because they don't have that many here.
Good for them.
Yeah. When I read the case, it scared me because it's 32 years old. That's a lifetime. And how many witnesses can still be alive and still be locals? It only takes like 2 good witnesses to make a case. You don't have to have 56.
We want 56, but we'll take 2.
Do it. If they're good, that's all you need. So now we have to try and figure out who had the anger and the means to murder poor Alma and leave those babies without a mother.
It has been 16 years and still no answer.
Police consider her killing a cold case.
Years later, the case is still unsolved.
There are so many cold cases out there just waiting to be solved.
The crime scene ultimately tells the story of the murder.
We want to bring justice to these victims.
Nice, cool little PD, huh?
Yeah.
Hi. Yolanda McClary. Nice to meet you.
Ryan
I'm
Annika.
Kelly.
Hi.
Hi, Sheriff.
Hi, Jason Landers.
Boy, you're tall.
Yeah,
I've heard that before.
I'm glad you guys are here.
Oh, we're excited.
The size of our office, it kind of limits us to work these cold cases, so it means a lot to us. We appreciate it. And I'm sure the family does as well. Paulding's a small community. We're rural. We don't have a lot of homicides here, and we don't want to. Back in 1981, I was in elementary school. Growing up, I heard about Alma's case. The fact that someone was brutally murdered in our area affected a great deal of people. So it's not only some closure, potentially, for the families, but it's also closure for our community.
So you got a place set up for us to work in?
Yeah, we got a war room back here if you want to follow me.
The Paulding County Jail is only 7 years old.
Oh, I love it.
Make us feel right at home, huh? But because it's not currently in use, it's going to serve as our workspace this week.
Y'all are finally where y'all belong, in jail. You too. Alan Brown. Rob Garcia. Rob, nice to meet you.
Brian Hannacraft.
Brian, nice to meet you. I'm excited.
Helping Yolanda and me out this week is Alan Brown. Y'all want to sit down and start talking about the case?
Yeah, I'm ready when you are.
Alan is coming on this case because we're working with Deputy Rob Garcia, who really wants to learn, and Alan is very patient, and he likes teaching, so that ought to be a good combination. You want to start and tell us about the case?
It's a homicide of Alma Knopfsinger. She was a single mom, had 3 kids from 2 marriages, divorced twice. On December 17th of 1981, about 9:28 in the morning, the EMS got a call of a body. They found Alma on her bed, face down, arms underneath her, and her head had been obviously hit with something, and it was bloody, and there's blood all over. No signs of forced entry. The door was actually open. Nothing was stolen. There was no signs of sexual assault or anything like that.
This was an extremely brutal crime. The medical examiner reported 7 strikes to the head, but also that her hands were black and blue. One hand was even broken, and she had puncture wounds to her forearm.
The date of our murder is?
Well, that's going to either be the 15th or 16th.
But the 17th is when she's found.
Yes. Alma's body was discovered on Thursday the 17th, but she was last seen alive just 2 days prior by her neighbor. Because the medical examiner was unable to establish a specific time of death, all we know for sure is that she was killed somewhere in that 3-day time span.
Okay, y'all want to start with this suspect first? Who's this, Rob?
David Delgado Sr.
David Delgado is Alma's first ex-husband and the father of her 2 oldest children, Debbie and Davy. She had recently given custody of those 2 children back to him.
He's still involved in her life.
Even though she had turned over their kids to him recently, it was still kind of a raw, fresh thing. She was regretting it. They were adjusting. There could have been some resentment going on with that.
Yep.
She had given custody back to David for a reason, so we need to look into that relationship to figure out why that could have been. There's no better motivator for getting people fired up than a divorce and custody and all that.
And then also, he's under the influence of Maria.
Alma and David had been divorced for a little while. He had moved on. He was dating a lady named Maria. David and Maria eventually got married, but back then Maria had some serious issues with the fact that Alma was still around in the world of David. She hated Alma.
She hated Alma.
Mutually hated each other. Yep.
Alma was a threat to her. Alma's always calling with every problem she has. David's always helping her. New girlfriend doesn't like that too much. She thinks there's too much of an attachment there.
Alma had been sending David cards. Let's get back together. I'm missing you. And that was threatening to Maria. Her next move is to go to Steve.
Maria goes to Stephen, who's Alma's second husband, and shows him these cards that Alma had been sending David. And the cards implied that Alma wanted to get back together with David.
I mean, a lot of girls hate the ex-wife, but she actually took her ammunition to Steve and showed it to him, trying to cause trouble. That was more of a bitch move than most women would do.
Yeah.
Maria was a suspect in the original investigation. She failed her polygraph, but polygraphs are not admissible in the courtroom, which makes it even more important that we go and talk to her again and ask her all of our questions. So the last suspect is Steve Knopfsinger. Steve Knopfsinger is Alma's most recent ex-husband. The two had met while working together at a meat processing plant called the Dinner Bell. They married and had one son named Ryan. When he was 2, they got divorced, and she gained custody.
He was making an effort at the time to try to reconcile.
He was very jealous, apparently.
He's definitely committed to that relationship, but she's not.
He wasn't over her, she was over him.
Correct. Correct.
Maria stirs the pot. Alma and Steve start getting separated. Divorce is filed. It gets final pretty fast, and 7 months later, she's dead. So Alma had 2 ex-husbands, and one of them is with a very jealous woman who goes crazy if he even talks to her. I can't tell you how many cases are prosecuted that were because of a divorce. Those issues between people never go away. Our first stop is to visit the members of Alma's family. We want to go meet them and see how they've dealt with this horrible tragedy. Hello.
Howdy.
Hi. It's so nice to meet you. I'm
Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
It has been very trying, not knowing who did it and that they're still out there. This case has been open for 32 years. It's time.
Tell us some stories about Alma. When she was a little girl, what was she like?
Oh, she was quiet.
She was?
She's very quiet.
She was very, very caring.
In 71, she was seeing David. They met at the high school here in Defiance, and she got pregnant with her first child. They had gotten married and didn't tell anybody.
Well, it seemed like she was really in love with him.
At the time, yes. Yeah. Yes.
Was she a good mom?
Yes, she was. She adored Davy. I talked to her almost every weekend.
Okay.
It was just, how are the kids, you know, and just
She never gave you any hints about what was going on? Nothing.
Never.
She kept it all to herself. And when you first heard, what'd that do to your mom and dad?
Oh, devastated.
You guys showing up, this happening now.
Excuse me. Okay. I think about her every day, and everybody else does too. So.
We're going to try our very hardest and try and find everybody we can to put all the little pieces together.
Good.
Okay?
Yes.
There's hope. Yeah.
We're investigating the death of Alma Knopfsinger, who was murdered in her bed while she was sleeping in 1981.
Welcome to the mock crime scene. Because we no longer have access to Alma's home, we've set up a mock crime scene. My hope is that it can still teach us something about the case. The blue lines would be your walls. So this will at least give you a visual, since we can't go back 32 years. Alma was found face down in her bed, dressed in a nightgown and a robe. The pillows and mattress were soaked with blood. Other than a couple of pillows on the ground, nothing else seemed out of place, which tells us whoever killed Alma was able to sneak in silently and approach her undetected all while Alma was sleeping. I know in these pictures you see a lot of blood.
When you look at her, you got blood from the waist up, which would indicate someone sitting on her and hitting her.
If I'm on top of you and I'm trying to hold you down, say I am striking you, and you're trying to get up, you're moving hard, you're moving your face around that pillow, those sheets, everything. She literally has abrasions on her chin. So what's hitting her head? We're not seeing anything distinctive here. Like a hammer will leave that round mark impression that you can see. No weapon was found in this case. Whatever was used as a weapon wasn't anything heavy enough to cause the skull to completely cave in. Now, she does have skull fractures, so I would probably gear more towards a material like wood, because metal caves and wood doesn't tend to do that. She also has on her arm a small 1/8 inch in diameter puncture wound. Both of her hands are so swollen and black and blue. And in fact, her left hand is broken.
Plus, remember when she was found, she actually had hairs recovered from her hand at the time.
Yes.
Her own hair, not the killer's hair.
What do we always do when someone's striking you? You bring your hands up because it hurts and you're trying to protect yourself. Although M.E. could count 7 distinctive hits to her head, that's not how many times she was hit.
A lot more than 7.
If her hands were taking some of these blows to the point that one broke, that tells me that she was hit far more than what we can tell just from her skull damage.
When you have those blows directed like to the face and the head area, that's like a personal attack. I mean, that is like...
And how angry the person was, how they had to know who it was, how they had to know where they were going.
And that's not just, I meant to kill her, that's, I'm mad and I mean to kill her.
A lot of rage.
We need to find out which of our 3 suspects, David, Maria, or Steve, could have hated Alma enough to commit this brutal murder. We're going to start by looking at the person Alma was closest with, her first ex-husband, David. How did Alma feel that David ended up with 2 kids?
Well, she just missed them kids so much, and she said it was foolish that she gave them up. I mean, she was really upset.
After marrying Steve and having Ryan, Alma gave custody of her 2 oldest children, Debbie and Davy Jr., back to their father, David. It's possible that this was still a point of contention between Alma and David Sr.
Did Alma have a good relationship with Dave, her first husband?
Yes.
With the kids and everything?
I never saw nothing out of control, or you know what I'm saying? Dave and her kind of was trying to get back together. And of course, Dave's girlfriend, Maria, didn't like the idea. A few times I met her, I had heard she was a very jealous woman.
Was jealous over Alma coming around or being around?
Right.
Maria has motive because Alma is attempting to get back with David. David has motive because he's moved on with his life. He's got his kids, he's got his girlfriend, and then here comes Alma getting in the way. So either David or Maria could have been upset enough with Alma that they would be willing to kill her.
So y'all are headed to the airport like around noon?
Yes.
And we're hoping to talk to them tonight.
Well, while y'all are having fun, we'll be taking care of business here. Right, Brian?
All right. We'll be in touch.
David and Maria ended up getting married and live out in the Houston area. So Alan and Rob are going to go to Texas to talk to them.
What I always try to do when I go on these deals is try to figure out something new to ask or close up a few loopholes. How you doing? Alan Brown.
Dave Delgado.
Deputy Garcia.
You guys got some pretty good evidence to come all the way down here?
We're doing all right. Yeah. We don't want to tap a lot of your time. Is Maria here too? Can we talk to her and then maybe talk to you?
Sure.
Do you ever have any crosswords with Alma at all?
Not really.
Do you remember when Alma signed the custody papers over and gave her kids full custody to David?
I was just told about it, but I don't really remember.
Tell us about the cards that were being sent and you found.
Oh, well, I mean, how would you like it if your wife or girlfriend was receiving notes and, you know, thinking of you, cards?
We interviewed Maria for roughly an hour, and we were very pointed in our questions because we wanted to know if she was angry enough to kill Alma. So when you find these cards and you go to Steve, how does that transpire?
We met downtown in Defiance, and I told him, I said, hey, why is Alma sending David these cards? You know, I should have never said that, but...
So he wasn't happy about that?
Yeah. To me now it seems childish. I mean, I could have just...
By showing Steve and Knopfsinger those cards, that caused a rift in Steve and Alma's marriage. She basically got this ball rolling, which caused the divorce. Well, We appreciate your time. To me, Maria has motive, but it's very light. And she was very straightforward. I got no vibes from Maria that she had any intention on ever harming Alma. So knowing Alma, you're her first ex-husband.
Yeah, we've been together for many years, so she'd always confide to me or, ask for advice or whatever,
She appears to be a good mother and a good person. Would that be your opinion of her?
True, because even during the divorce, I said, look, you can have the cars, you can have the house, the whole thing, just let me have custody of the kids. She said, no.
So at what point did she, really start trying to get back with you?
When she was pregnant, she comes to me, and I said, I'm sorry. I just can't, have you come back or, get married again or whatever, because I just couldn't help it. I guess there were some things that was going on with Steve that I didn't know. She didn't know where to go to. She didn't know what to do anymore.
Right.
And so, I guess, no choice, just get married then. Well, then after a while, it's like, well, now he has her.
According to David, Alma had confided in him that she didn't even want to marry Stephen. She tried to back out. She went through with it because she was pregnant with Ryan. She knew she made a big mistake. But she related to you that the reason for giving the kids custody to you was because of Stephen.
Yes. Yeah.
And what he was doing to him, his treatment.
Yeah. Steve couldn't get along with David and Debbie. They always talked about Steve being a rubber band and always hitting Debbie with a rubber band. It's just out of meanness. She'd make Debbie cry, and, after a while, Alma just couldn't take it. She said, okay, you can have custody of the kids. Well, I knew right there that that's not like her.
In talking to David, it didn't appear he had any kind of grudge towards Alma over the children or anything else. We appreciate your time.
Hopefully we get that resolved.
Thank you.
Get your back.
Did you miss us?
Actually, yeah, when you're on an airplane that long, we could even miss you guys.
We've learned that Alma Knopfsinger gave up custody of her children, Debbie and Dave Jr., because of problems with her second husband, Steve. That's a big sacrifice for a mother to make, and that tells us that things must have been really bad with Alma and Steve. Does anybody still feel like David Delgado and Maria Delgado need to be on the suspect board?
Not at all.
Not at all.
All right, let's take them down.
With David and Maria cleared, this is a case of one suspect, Stephen Knopfsinger.
Hello?
Hello, is this David?
Yes, this is David.
This is Lieutenant Hancrat at the Paulding County Sheriff's Office. How are you?
Hi, fine.
David Jr. was 10 years old when his mother was murdered, but he lived with Alma and Steve before she gave up custody.
Well, Ryan was little, so I don't remember a lot. He was never nice to me and my sister. We weren't as real kids, like Ryan was. But Steve definitely was a kid, physical with my mom. When I went into, the family room one day, and Steve was, holding my mom by the arms and grabbing her real hard and stuff, and, me being a little kid, I was like, leave my mom alone. He just yelled at me, and he was like, you want me to break her arms right here, right now?
Alma never filed any police reports of domestic violence, which means that if Steve is Alma's killer, anything that Debbie and Davey Jr. saw with their own eyes or heard with their own ears could be crucial to this case. Can you talk a little bit about what, if anything, you remember about your mom?
I don't have a lot of memories since I was pretty young.
Right.
Growing up without a mom was difficult. And it wasn't until I had a child of my own that I realized, probably how difficult things were for my mom. It's still hard. It's really hard to not have her.
What do you remember about Steve?
I don't have that many memories of him, just that he was not a really nice guy. He would yell at me a lot, and he would definitely favor my half-brother, Ryan.
Okay. So not a lot of fond memories there then of Steve.
No, I can't think of one.
What about you and Ryan?
We didn't grow up together. Started talking to him when we were in high school. I just knew that he was my brother, and so I wanted to have a relationship with him. I had asked him growing up, did he know that we existed? And he said that, in pictures, me and my brother would be in them, but his dad had told him that we were neighbor kids. He didn't tell them that, he had a brother and a sister.
You hear that story, and I lived in a small town. I went to a high school like that. How do you grow up in a town this size and never know that on the other side of town are two people that are your blood, that are your brother and your sister? How can that happen unless someone is diabolically manipulative and trying to keep it from you for some crazy reason?
What about you and Ryan today?
We've just never been able to see eye to eye on certain things, his dad being one of them. So we just had a huge falling out, and that was 2 years ago.
Okay.
Thank you for all your help.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, Debbie, bye-bye. We don't want to talk to Ryan right now because he's still close to Steve, but we've managed to track down another witness that could be really valuable. And next, that Steve was with 17 years after Alma's death. We'll go up there and order 3 coffees and then bring her out here. Okay. Our witness lived with Steve. Her opinion or anything Steve might have told her about Alma could tell us what kind of man we're dealing with.
He said he was a widow, that she was an undercover cop and was killed in a car accident.
Did it seem like he was affected by it?
He said, I'll always love her. She'll always be in my heart. Several weeks to a month maybe passed. I went to the public library and I got a hold of some newspaper articles. I knew something was really wrong.
That should have scared you.
So when Steve did come home, I said, I'm going to go visit my mom. And that's when he knocked me on the shoulder and he said, what in the hell's wrong with you? I said, there's nothing wrong with me. I have to go. And I walked out of the house that fast. I was plenty scared that day. He said, when are you coming home? I said, I'm not ever coming home.
She might not have suffered the same physical abuse that Alma did, but this woman was smart and brave and strong enough to leave as soon as she did.
I remember him saying, you'll always be in my heart. Nobody will ever take that away from me.
That's the same thing he told you about how he felt about Alma, and look what happened to her.
Yes. Yeah.
As we expand our investigation to the people who were close enough in Steve's life, we come to his family.
You have a seat right back, man.
Okay.
There's not much from them at all in the case files, so they could have some new information.
Jim, you may have some information for us on this homicide case?
Well, I was married to Steve's sister.
What can you tell me about it?
I remember hearing that he could have done it. That was the atmosphere amongst the family at the time.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any firsthand knowledge of that?
I remember hearing that there was a nightstick or a stick he had in the car.
Okay.
Beside the driver's seat.
Steve had the club in his car?
Yeah. He used it for, like, when he was hunting or whatever, to hit the animals if they wasn't dead, this kind of stuff.
A wooden club could have caused most of Alma's injuries, especially the type of damage seen in Alma's skull. It's worth trying to find out more about it.
Did Elaine ever say she's seen it?
I think so, yeah.
Would she stick up for Steve? Would she tell us her true feelings?
If you ask her a question, she's going to answer it honestly.
Okay.
No matter what.
Hi, Elaine. How are you? We talked to your ex-husband, Jim.
Yeah.
And do you remember Steven ever carrying a club in his car?
Yeah.
He did?
Yeah. It's called a smoke stick.
A smoke stick. Describe a smoke stick to me.
It's a long piece of wood.
So
I'm thinking it's like...
So that's about 3 feet?
Yeah.
2.5, 3 feet.
So they would hang half a beef on it at dinner bell.
Okay.
Something like that.
Hang a half a beef, so like
hang meat on it.
A stick, and then the hook would hang on it?
I get it, yeah.
Yeah.
This smoke stick could possibly match Alma's injuries, but it only helps our case if we can prove that Steve had it at the time of the murder.
What did he carry it for?
Protection.
Did he still have it in the time frame of when all this transpired?
He had already gotten rid of it.
Why did he get rid of it?
Oh, he mentioned that Ryan wanted to play with it, and he didn't want Ryan to play with it.
Okay.
Because Steve got rid of the smoke stick, it's impossible that we'll find it 32 years after the fact. All of a sudden, the stick was missing after the murder, and he comes up with, well, I just didn't want Ryan playing with it.
That's a bullshit excuse. The smoker stick would be a perfect weapon, but without it, it's a bust. We got nothing.
Without a murder weapon, we still need insight that can connect Steve Nossinger to the murder of his ex-wife, Alma. So we're on our way to question Steve's sister, Cheryl, and her husband, Tom. She is his sister, so you have that bond from being a sibling, and they don't want to tell. You know, they don't want to be the one that says, I put my brother in prison.
At first, it appears they don't want to talk to us. And then Tom tells us the whole family's scared of Steve Nossinger. He's violent, and he's odd. So Tom tells me that Steve Nossinger had a wife before Alma, and they had a son that was stillborn. And that after that, Stephen was never the same. When it came to Stephen's first living son, Ryan, he didn't care about Alma, he didn't care about the divorce, he didn't care about anything but Ryan.
When you work on cases like this, you always want to try and figure out why someone would commit such a horribly brutal murder. So the question is, because Steve lost his first child, does the possibility of losing Ryan become the trigger for him brutally murdering Alma? And going through all the divorce paperwork, I found this. They file for the divorce, then they try to reconcile. In the middle of the counseling time period, this says, on or about the 8th day of March, while at their home, the plaintiff, that's Stephen, he's the one that filed for the divorce, did physically abuse her by grabbing her by the arm and throwing her to the ground and threatening to break her arm.
So there's 2 incidents.
At least 2. Yeah, and this is when they're supposed to be getting back together again.
Okay.
He's at his best to convince her to stay with him, and that's what happened. 5 months later, she's dead. This is what he says in his affidavit, filing for divorce. My wife departed the marital domicile Thursday, January 29th, 81. I fear that if my wife is granted custody of the child, that she will keep the child from me and I will never see the child again. It's looking to me like Steve was going to go along with divorcing Alma, but when he wasn't going to get custody of Ryan, he could not handle it. When Steve went to court to get custody completely in his name, it says in here, for the reason that the child's natural mother died on December 16th, 1981. I thought that was kind of funny. It's pretty interesting that Steve is picking such a specific date because law enforcement never actually determined which day she died. Maybe he's got the date right. What do y'all think?
Yeah, because if you killed someone, you're not going to forget.
You can tell him, even the police are confused exactly when she died, but apparently you're not.
All we know for sure is that Alma died sometime between Tuesday the 15th and Thursday the 17th. Because Tuesday is the last time Alma was seen alive by her neighbor, Mary Schaefer.
So Mary Schaefer, who we're going to see, says that she was standing at her kitchen window, saw Alma drive in her driveway, didn't see anyone get out of the car, doesn't know if Ryan was with her. Not only was Mary the last person to see Alma alive, she was also the first person to discover Alma's body on Thursday morning.
I just remember seeing her laying there on that bed. She was such a good person and such a good friend. And I think about it a lot. I miss her. I miss her so much.
What do you remember about Steve or anyone else involved?
Steve was a hothead. Before I had even met Alma, she came over to my house one night, pouring down rain, and she said that her and Steve had gotten into a big fight. I said, "Do you want to call the cops?" She said no.
So she was distraught enough to run out and go to somebody's house she's never been to before.
Right. I know she was scared of Steve.
How was Alma as far as letting Steve have the baby on his off days?
She would let him have him whenever he wanted him.
When is the last time you talked to Alma?
The Monday, just before she was killed. She just called me and told me that Steve was all upset. And they got into a big argument about it and stuff. And she told Steve that he wasn't going to get Ryan any more other than regular visitation time.
We may have just found the trigger that pushed a sick man over the edge.
She is going to be the DA's #1 star witness.
Heck yeah. I've worked a lot of cases where divorce is the motivating factor. I had a case where a woman left her husband and he pulled up to her house, got out of the car with the bat, and beat her upside the head with that baseball bat over and over and over again. You see that kind of anger and rage, and it tells you who the killer is, just like in this case. We need to always ask ourselves, who wanted Alma dead? I think it's time to prepare for a face-to-face confrontation with Steve.
We have the Defiance County Sheriff's Office ready to go. As far as we can tell, he was potentially home yesterday afternoon. He has a white Ford F-150 registered in his name, which was there yesterday. We've got the unmarked units ready to go. We've got the security detail set several blocks away. It's a big day. I'm hoping he'll talk to us freely.
What's the plan? Just tell him that we reopened Alma's case and we'd like to talk to him. Don't say if you have time, because then it kind of gets people in out.
Rob and Alan Butler says the truck's in the driveway.
He doesn't see any movement, just so you know.
We're here.
From what I've learned about Steve, it's possible he has quite a gun collection, so we have to be careful.
There they are.
There's no doubt about where he stands on burglars.
Yeah. You see him down there?
I see them. He only has one vehicle that we know of, right?
We're the owner.
A guy with signs like that probably doesn't enter his door very easily. Because of those signs on the door and because of people telling us how opinionated he is and how odd he is, I thought he was home. He just wasn't answering the door.
Come on, let's walk over and see. It was open a minute ago.
That was?
Yeah.
So he's home.
All right, we're gonna call him because I think he's in here.
Hello?
Stephen Officer?
Yes?
Stephen, it's Deputy Garcia from the Paulding County Sheriff's Office. We're at your house. Are you home, sir?
No, not at the moment, I'm not.
Yes, he is.
Can we set up a time to talk to you?
Well, I'm out at the mall right now with a friend of mine.
Do you know where the Defiance Sheriff's Office is?
Yes, I do.
He ain't at the mall. I think he's really at the mall.
No, I think he's in his house.
Okay. There's a very good possibility he's in there.
I guess we'll go to the sheriff's office.
Sheriff West, if you have a phone call in one, Sheriff line 1.
This is him. So you're at home right now, huh?
Yes.
All right. It'll probably take me 10 or 15 minutes to get over there, but you're at home, right?
Yeah, yes.
He says he's home and he has to stay there and watch the dogs.
He's always been home.
He's always been home.
I told him it'd probably take me 10 or 15 minutes to get over
let's
there.
get our stuff. Steve Knopfsinger calls back and says, you know what, on second thought, I'm not coming down there. Y'all can come to my house if you want to talk to me.
I'm gonna ask him, why'd you lie to us about being at the mall?
Because he's a freaky man that doesn't ever enter his door. So, you know, you got to do what you got to do. We load back up and go back towards his house. Steve is running us around town. He wants this interview to happen on his time at his place. It's going to be his way.
That's right.
Showtime.
Steve agrees to talk to Alan and Rob in his home. Meanwhile, we're all outside listening to every word. And right off the bat, Steve's acting like he barely even remembers Alma. Last time he sees her alive, and he doesn't remember. And if it was innocent, he would. Don't you remember the last time you saw your brother? Or the last time I saw my mom?
Exactly.
Remember? And we didn't do anything wrong. They ask him every question we have about Alma, about Ryan, about the abuse. His answer to nearly every question is, I don't remember.
He's pretty smart. He just won't say anything.
He's starting to get comfortable and close down, isn't he?
That happens in cold cases all the time. It's the I don't remember defense. Over 2 hours later, Rob and Alan have no choice but to just walk away.
When things became uncomfortable to Steve, if I had a question for him that he didn't seem to like, he had a drink, and he'd drink from it. And he'd get up and walk off and say, oh, let me go over here and get a towel. And he'd wipe the kitchen table and come back. My feeling is Steve was calculating and thinking of an answer, the right answer that he wanted to give. And it's frustrating because there's nothing you can do about it.
What do you think?
I mean, he selectively chose to remember what he wanted to.
Right.
But he was pretty good at coming up with follow-up BS.
Yeah.
Steve doesn't add much to our case, but you don't prepare circumstantial evidence cases by hoping for a confession, because it doesn't usually happen. You have to build a probable cause that can stand all by itself, and that's what we hope we did this week. Okay, so we're pretty much done talking to witnesses at this point. Everything else on the board, all these points have now been addressed and corroborated and strengthened with live witnesses who can testify in a courtroom. The evidence that we found this week specifically shows a case that wasn't a theft, it wasn't a rape, it was personal.
We have a tremendous amount of blood.
And how angry the person was, how they had to know who it was, how they had to know where they were going.
And a suspect with a history of domestic abuse.
And I was like, leave my mom alone. And he just yelled at me, you want me to break her arms right here?
Who concealed the truth about Alma's death from the people that were closest to him.
He said that she was an undercover cop and was killed in a car accident.
The witnesses and the evidence in this case clearly shows that Steve had motive. He was upset about his divorce from Alma, and most importantly, in the days before her murder, they fought, and she threatened to take away from Steve the thing he cared about most in the whole world, his son Ryan.
She told Steve that he wasn't going to get Ryan anymore.
What we have is a probable cause. It shows that Steve was so desperate to keep Ryan in his life, he elevated his abuse to murder. With all these factors, with all the witnesses, with all the evidence, do you feel like there's enough to talk to your DA?
Absolutely.
Rob?
Yes.
Brian?
My heart, 100%, I believe that we're on the right track.
Paulding County has never had to work on a cold case before. So as Brian, Rob, and Jason bring in the prosecutor and present the probable cause to him, it's a chance to solve one for the first time.
At this point, we've accomplished quite a bit this week. My belief in what we have today, based off of all of our evidence, all of our interviews, based off of the original incident report, the crime scene photographs, and a multitude of people that are willing to come to Paulding County and testify under oath to the truth as they remember it, Steve Knopfsinger is responsible for the murder of his ex-wife.
Okay, we're dying to know.
All right, so here's the deal. We laid things out for him. So I want you to be honest with me, give me your honest opinion. Can we take this to grand jury, or can't we? And he said that he will take this to grand jury.
Oh, that's awesome.
Good for him.
That's beautiful. Whole new perspective on how to work cases and all these little things, how important they are.
I'm very grateful for the help that Kelly and Yolanda and Alan have been able to bring to Paulding County.
This is my first cold case, and I did learn a lot from it. It really opened my eyes.
Their talent, their knowledge, it's just been an awesome experience. And to bring some sort of peace or closure to Alma and her family and her friends is a feeling that's beyond words.
We can't wait to go tell Danny and Cece the good news. Usually, it's kind of a nervous day, but this is going to be a good one. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Alma's oldest two children, Debbie and Davy, drive in to hear the news, too. Well, we had a very busy week. Yesterday, the sheriff set up a meeting with the DA, Joe Burkhart, and then he said that he is very excited to take the case to a grand jury to ask them to indict Steve Knopfsinger for the murder of your mom.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Wow. Yeah, isn't that awesome?
After 32 years, be a good ending to all this.
My mom will be very happy.
Yeah. And I think that when a jury of people here in this county hear it one day, they're not going to have any trouble finding him guilty.
Wow. I know it's a lot to take in. All of your faces are just kind of like...
I think they're stunned.
Yeah.
I'd kind of given up. Hopefully she'll get justice and closure and be at peace, and the family will too, and I will see her someday again.
Y'all don't have any contact with Ryan right now. You might reach out to him when you feel ready. He's lived his whole life with a certain version of the truth in his mind. So sometimes it takes all the way to the trial when they hear it for the very first time. The best thing you can do is just be patient.
Yes. There's just lots of moments in my life where I needed a mom and didn't have her. So that piece has always been missing. I feel bad for Ryan because he didn't have a mom either. And, you know, this is his dad. And so this is something that he's going to have to deal with. And it can't be easy. So I know there's like a lot of celebration and a lot of, you know, happiness for us. But I can't imagine what he's going to have to go through.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It is really nice to be able to tell them good news that 32-year patience has finally paid off.
After all this time, huh?
Yes. That's a great day. Prosecuting attorney Joe Burkhart convened a special grand jury in the case of Steve Knopfsinger.
Go. Just leave the door open, let him go in the house.
The grand jury in Paulding County, Ohio, indicted Steve for the capital murder of Alma.
Get him? Will she get him? No. You're right, I told you. I'm not going to do nothing, guys. Okay. All right.
On August the 1st, 2014, Steve Knopfsinger was arrested by the Paulding County Sheriff's Office, and he currently awaits trial.